Hi, Bob.
Hello. Okay, well, we're at the PyCon conference in Dallas, Texas. This is the 2006. It's the third or fourth PyCon. I'm a software developer. I live in San Francisco. And if I didn't do the name yet, it's Bob Ippolito. I'm an open source developer. I also do commercial software, but primarily what I care about is the open source stuff because it's fun and it's useful. And this year I've been sprinting primarily on PyPy, Python implementation in Python, which is something entirely new that nobody's tried before.
How did you get in contact with PyPy, or how did you get to it?
I found out about PyPy because I was involved with the Stackless project with Christian Tismer, who is also part of the PyPy project. And I was also very interested in Armin Rigo's work with Psycho, just-in-time compiler for Python code. I met them physically, most of them at the Berlin Stackless sprint. I believe that was in March of 2004. But I met some of them at previous PyCon conferences.
Received by the attenders of the conference?
Well, I think that, that the attenders of PyCon are very much aware of PyPy and its progress because the PyPy people have been at most of the other PyCons presenting their work. So I think it's relatively well known what they're doing, despite the fact that they're all located in Europe.
What is the particular interest in PyPy you have?
Well, I'm interested in just about all of PyPy. The performance aspect is certainly the most practical interest that I have because a lot of times these days you really need the right code that runs fast. It's not that often that you need the right code that runs fast, but when you do, you need a way to write such code. And the current technology, you would write such code in C or C++ maybe, and it's just a very boring task to write code in those environments. And I've been quite fond of Python for several years now, and writing fast code in Python would be very, very nice in the situations where you need it. And additionally, there's also parts of the implementation of Python that I would like to see changed one way or another. And having a Python compiler and interpreter and just-in-time runtime for Python written in Python makes it very easy to try out new ideas of how you think the language should operate and the language should work. For example, the PyPy team is working on continuations and a sort of stackless variant, and also experimenting with different garbage collection machineries. And they can easily just swap that out, whereas in CPython you would effectively have to rewrite the whole thing and everything that depends on it in order to try out ideas like that.
With having this consortium, what do you think about this whole construction?
Well, I think it's excellent that PyPy has had such support from both the educational community and government and commercial, because it really, in order to succeed, a project needs to get funding one way or another. And right now, most of the people working on these sorts of things don't have infinite funds and free time. So it certainly helps to have funding. And it's good to have funding from many different sources as well, because it's not controlled by one particular company's interests. Like, say, the IronPython distribution is owned by Microsoft these days, and really they, while they offer a lot of information to third-party developers that aren't part of Microsoft, they actually will not accept ideas or source code from anyone else, whereas PyPy is more transparent and it's more open, and it will accept contributions from basically anyone qualified to write code. And it's good that PyPy is partially funded by education and government, because honestly, a project like this is very unlikely to be sponsored by commercial interests, because they're looking for more of a short-term return on their investment, whereas the governments and educational institutions are more willing to take a chance and go for something more long-term. But I think as PyPy becomes more mature, commercial interest will certainly become more common. Right now, there's only a few corporations interested in sponsoring PyPy, but I think in the near future, once there's a practical application for PyPy, there will be much more commercial interest, and they'll be much more likely to be funded for future development.
Accept this as a positive fact, or are they a bit skeptical?
I honestly haven't heard any negative reaction whatsoever to the funding. I think pretty much the entire community thinks that having a project funded is a good thing because money can only help in situations such as this.
Without funding, do you think this project would have been possible?
I don't think that this project would have been possible in the scope that it's currently being executed in, but I do think that this project would have happened anyway because people like Armin Rigo and Christian Tismer and Michael Hudson, they're really interested in this sort of stuff, and they were working on similar projects in their free time and for their theses and whatnot. So I think that PyPy to an extent would have happened anyway, but I don't think it would have happened as quickly or as usefully because there's a lot of ideas in the current iteration of PyPy that really took a lot of brain power to establish, and that can only happen when you have so many people dedicated more or less full-time to a project like this.
Did you appreciate it? Did you work on something special?
Well, right now I've only worked on a little bit this time because it's been over a year since the last time I worked on PyPy at the sprint in Vilnius, and the code has changed drastically in that amount of time. There's still parts of the code I'm familiar with, but the parts that I was working on didn't exist at all in the last time that I'd seen it. So yesterday I was pretty much just getting up to speed on what was going on. But it seems that people are definitely making a lot of progress in terms of getting the RC types foreign function interface working and getting some of the new syntax and features from Python 2.5 in there. And I think that this sprint will definitely be very good for PyPy, as all the other sprints have been as well.